Now we have highlights of some specific areas in the president's 31-page address, and ahead of our security desk, Emefa Apau joins me in studio with a breakdown. So let's begin from the security and violent extremism angle.
Okay, so the president gives us two angles when it comes to security, both external and then internal. Maybe we start from external, and we talk about the fact that West Africa is under threat of terrorism and violent extremism, and thankfully Ghana is in the middle there without any form of attack. Thankfully, we better knock on wood that nothing like that happened. So there's been an alarming increase in chieftaincy and land disputes also around the country. That brings it to internal. But on the external, maybe I'll expand a bit more on some of the things that he raises about the fact that we are still adopting the see something, say something approach, and the fact that, of course, we are part of ECOWAS, the region, and all that, the things that we ought to do externally together with the other countries to ensure that Ghana remains as safe as it is. And then also coming down into internal, we've talked about the chieftaincy and land dispute. Boku was mentioned, but also government has quickened the retooling of security agencies. He talks about the fact that even the Ghana Police Service and what they've done with their offices, and hoping that others will emulate the example of what the IGP, Dr. Akuffo Dampare, has done in terms of the renovation of the Ghana Police Service. So the issue about Boko also comes up, which is the internal bit. The issue about the internal bit, and we know recently some 4 radio stations have been closed down in Boko as part of containing the situation in the area. So that is one of the things that we know that is being done in terms of ensuring that Boko's situation does not escalate, because he talks about it that it's become a magnet for other things to happen in terms of people are concerned that it's also a way that we can have violent extremists joining in, because it's the war between, or should I say, the conflict between the Mampusis and the Kusasis, and the possibility that they can import people to joining that fight.
Which will escalate.
Which will escalate, and then there may be a spillover. So really, that's when it comes to peace and security, that's the main issues that we raise in terms of external and internal, in terms of how we can deal with the situation, especially we know that it's an election year.
Okay, so on the economy also?
Exactly. So on the economy, at least, thankfully, we've been hearing from the president for the very first time, taking responsibility for where we are in terms of what has happened under his administration. I've been hearing from the former finance minister, Setekbe, for instance, mention that even though it's belated, it's also refreshing to hear that he's now comparing his own record with that of his record, as against what we've seen over the period where he compares his record as against that of the previous, which is John Mahama. So every performance indicator used shows that we have we've done more in these 7 years than in any of the 8 years under the NDC. And that's what the president is saying. And that the recent change in the leadership of the finance ministry will not affect the deal with the IMF. We've been hearing from the professors of finance on this, that is not the issue about personality, it's the issue about policy versus personality. So whoever it is that was leading it, we know that Kwesi Botwe started it, and then Setekbe took over, at least when we first went to the IMF.
That's an assurance from the president.
Exactly, that it will not affect it. But even though the minority leader, you heard him in Parliament mention that it appears we have an internal finance minister and an external finance minister in terms of the appointment of Ken Ofori-Atta and then Amin Adam. But the president says that will not affect it. Talks about inflation dropping from 54% in December to 23.5 in January. The macroeconomic indicators, he says, are pointing to the right direction as well. He talks about programs like LEAP, school feeding and capitation grants are all protected under the IMF conditions. So he's talking about the conditionalities and what will be affected and what will not be, really. That's on the economy as well.
All right. Or on the judiciary also, he's been talking about.
Yes, he talks about the arms of government and the fact that we ought to continue to respect the 3 arms that we have. So with the judiciary, he talks about the Office of the Attorney General saving the country over 10 trillion Ghana cedis. And that's what is causing a lot of talk, is raising a lot of talk, really. I was wondering, could it be that the president was talking in old cedis?
Well, probably, because I overheard someone ask, where is the money?
Exactly. The evidence, really, we are yet to hear the evidence. But we'll be hearing from the Attorney General. We are told that in the coming days we'll get some form of evidence, because even during the speech, there were questions about what the evidence is, because we are the IMF for 3 billion. And if we've been able to save 10 trillion, what kind of judgment debts are these? And what exactly is it going to go into? Where is that money? And what exactly we'll do with it is what we would get to know in the coming days from the Attorney General when he gives us some answers. Also, he talks about residential units being built for the judges. There've been improved digitization in the court system as well. So really key issues when it comes to the judiciary. We'll get to talk about the legislature and then also the executive, which largely talks about. But it's an election year also, and he was heavy on issues about election, Carlos. And he says EC will ensure a credible and peaceful election. In fact, they must ensure, he says, and that the EC must work with political parties to address their concerns. Issues about IPAC, NDC concerns have come up. And then government will ensure that Ghana's reputation is not damaged come December 7th. Is that an assurance or is that a charge to keep? So that and more we'll get to know. So these are the key highlights. Issues about energy also comes up. It's a 31-page report, and I'm sure in the coming days we'll get to digest it all right here on the channel.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure to see you. Pleasure to be with you.
Pleasure to see you too.
Yes.
Welcome
Carlos.
back.
Thank you, Carlos.